And welcome to This Week in Worcester podcast. I am Tom Marino, editor of This Week in Worcester. I am here with Mr. John Edward Keogh. He is the executive producer of Manny J Media and about 400 other things. How are you, Mr. 400 Other Things?
I'm doing pretty good. Got a lot of stuff going on.
Indeed. An update from last week. Burnt Lipgate is still well underway, and I look ridiculous, and it is what it is. Taking things directly from hotness and then putting it in your mouth is bad. Don't do it. That is the lesson for the day.
It's becoming a meme on the end.
Oh, I didn't change the description. I'm a dope.
Oh no. We're gonna you have to go back and do it afterwards, like everybody else.
You want to talk about? Oh, I don't think I can edit it either while we're live. Oh well.
You can edit it afterwards. Should
we just kill this and restart?
Why? Because of the description?
Yeah.
You can fix it afterwards.
All right. We'll move on. Moving on.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the our dear governor's new shelter policy.
Our dear governor.
And on what level it is such a great idea, I know not. But you start us off.
Okay, so right off the bat, it's not a good idea at all. It's a horrible idea. All right, so Governor Healy, in the latest budget package, got in the change of the decades-old Massachusetts law, which was right to shelter. Right, so what the right to shelter law did was specifically, if you were a woman with children, you were automatically gotten to bed as fast as possible. They would try to get you in to a shelter if you went to a place that offered services, right? So that was generally how it was. And then also, even if you weren't a woman with children, if you were a person who got in line, at any of the shelters in some capacity, they had to find you a spot, right? So what the right to shelter did was it kind of created a first come, first served basis for sheltering in Massachusetts for many, many, many decades. Of course, that has its own problems, right? But instead of changing the law entirely and have a big, broad discussion about how we do sheltering, there's two things that they did. First one is they didn't really repeal the old law, which is what has been widely reported. They edited it, right? Which is a common thing in Massachusetts. And Tom and I, pulls our hairs out. Why don't they just take the law and change it? But what they'll do is they'll insert a line. And what they did was they created a 5-day period of time for emergency sheltering. So that's emergency sheltering is different than regular shelter, which often has more services. Emergency shelters are a little bit less. More extensive shelters have additional services, bigger spaces often, and are usually steps along the way, which is something we've talked about a couple times over the past month or so. And in this case, they created a 5-day limit. So you got 5 days in an emergency shelter. Now, the weekends don't count. So that is something that was in there that didn't get reported, right? So if you get put in there on a Friday, it's really that you would have until the following Thursday, right? So that's kind of how they did it. It's 5 business days is what it is. But what this does is it forces people that are in shelters, because there's been long-term sheltering of a lot of people over the past few years, back out on the street, unless there's a place that they have alternative. And so it creates this thing called shelter churn, which is something they were already dealing with the right to shelter law in place. And we talked about this already. There's a difference between chronically homeless and non-chronically homeless, right? So to be chronically homeless, you have to have access services. I think it's 6 times, over a 12-month period for 3 consecutive years. There's a scientific way that they come up with that term, chronically homeless versus non-chronically homeless. And so we also have, at the same time, Massachusetts is a state that accepts from other states migrants, okay, that have been sent here from Texas. We saw some really bad stuff done by the governor of Florida last year, where he sent a plane to Martha's Vineyard, which was just ridiculous. And we generally accept everybody we can here, which is a good thing about Massachusetts. It's not a bad thing at all. However, when there's not enough shelter beds already, and you bring in another population that is not have enough space, and you add them to one that's already existing, you have a shelter crisis. At the same time, Massachusetts has the lowest vacancy rate of apartments in the country. And then Worcester is actually in the top three, I think, still on the list in the state.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Worcester, Springfield, Boston, and they kind of move up and down based on percentage.
I forget when I did it. I want to
You
say
did it like a couple months ago.
June. Yeah, and it
Yeah.
wasn't the third worst in the state. It was the third worst in the country.
Right. So Worcester, the city, was the third worst in the country, right, which is really bad. Okay. So what that ends up meaning is that now you have people that are constantly going through it. They're constantly moving through the system. They get into an emergency shelter. They only get 5 days. They get pushed back out. And of course, we want to make sure that the people who are the most vulnerable, so often families, so people with children, are the ones that we try to take care of first. It's not that we don't want to take care of the adults. It's just that we have to try to take care of the families first. It's just the nature of the system, right? We have limited resources. We also try to deal with women who are battered, and then I think it was 2 years ago during COVID, they added LGBTQI youth who were like kicked out of the house by their family, or and then they also added youth who were dealing with suicidal ideation, right? So like when you in that case, you're dealing with someone who might harm themselves, and then there's a different step to get them into a different kind of anyways. But these shelters, what we consider to be emergency shelters, there's not a lot of them, so they're just slammed. They got people standing outside the doors, and they need to get them out of there and into the next step. So this law literally went into place the day that she signed the budget. Which just doesn't make any sense. There should have been some kind of timeline, something. And now every single shelter worker that I'm talking to, it's just mayhem right now, because they are being forced to enforce these rules, and people just don't have any place to go. Of course, it's August, and there's this thing in Massachusetts where it's like, oh, when it's warm, it's okay for people to be out on the streets. And
Right.
it's unbelievable. It's like, oh yeah, it's fine. It's the summer. They can sleep outside. It's cool.
But you'll get fined or arrested or God knows what.
Of course, then the Supreme Court just recently came down that you can't use encampments, and that municipalities can fine or arrest people for that. Our city manager said that he's not going to do that, but there's no law stopping him from doing that anymore. So now it's possible that this 5-day shelter limit could kick people out on the streets, force them into an encampment, and maybe that's the first day in the encampment, and the police come along and bulldoze it, they get arrested. So you literally could be, not saying that that's happened, we don't have any evidence, that you're going to take a person, put them in an emergency shelter because they need services, and then kick them out 5 days later to arrest them because they have nowhere else to go. This is exactly what long-term homelessness and unhoused advocates have been saying was potentially going to happen for decades if the law was directed in this way. This is literally the crisis that we predicted for decades, and here it is at our door, and they think that they're right. So Governor Healy actually said that there will be no change to this. This is how it's going to be. This is what we're going to do, and there's nothing that anybody's going to stop. We saw some advocates go to the state house and advocate for it. If you're watching this show, okay, and you think that you know how to deal with someone in a shelter situation, you don't. Let me just tell you that right now, because people who have worked in the shelter system for decades don't know how to help someone in that situation. It is a level of stress that almost everyone has never dealt with before. You literally don't know how to deal with yourself. There's things that start to happen that's not normal when you live in a house. I know this because I was homeless. I lived in the streets. I lived in the bus stations. I've done those things. I went through that process in my life. And I'm telling you right now, that your mind doesn't work right all the time. Not necessarily because you're crazy or you're addicted to drugs, which is what people automatically assume, but because you don't know where you're going to sleep. And that affects your mind. This is just literally the most ridiculous thing I've seen yet out of the Massachusetts legislator and governor in relation to this issue. And I have no idea how they're going to solve it. But it's literally a crisis that they made for themselves. They did not have to do this. It could have been done differently. But here we are. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't get how they, I mean, I get that there's capacity issues, but I just don't get how you go from 30 days to 5.
It's unbelievable. What a change. What a
And
change.
it's the same thing that I've said about this many times. Regardless of what the circumstances are, and how people got to that situation, what do you expect them to do? Evaporate? Where do they need to go somewhere? I mean, regardless of what led to that situation, and the scapegoating of oh, it's just illegals pouring over the border and coming to mass. It's just not the case.
That's not the case. It existed before those things happened. It is not something that is just related to people who are coming from other countries. It is not. It is not. And saying that just shows how ignorant people are when they say things like that. It's not that. We had this crisis going on for decades. The Brooke Amendment. Yeah. So again, that's the thing that, it's been ongoing. Wanda's right. It's something that's been going on for decades that we've been talking about in this community. And, at this point, it's like, I don't know what to say to the Democratic establishment, because in Massachusetts, it's not anybody other than them that's making these decisions. Right. So it's like, hey, what are you doing? What are you thinking about? Who thought it was right to do this drop? It doesn't make any sense at all. And there's not one advocate that has worked within the system or these structures for the last 3 or 4 decades that has any level of prominence who was on board with this. This was universally panned by unhoused advocates. The only person and people that thought this was going to work is Maura Healey and the Democratic-led legislature here in Massachusetts. What were they thinking? What were they thinking?
I mean, what they're thinking is that they want to preserve, they're not going to raise taxes, even though the governor was elected on the same ballot that voters chose to raise taxes, so she cut taxes. So, they have, I think I saw something this week that, they're looking at another, basically they're 225 million upside down right now.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the voters weren't too stupid, maybe.
Oh, yeah, the millionaires tax brought in this big amount of money, which
well, yeah, but that's earmarked for certain stuff. But I mean,
yeah,
then she did the tax cut on the backside.
Yeah.
That was all her idea. And I mean, you say this a lot about Democrats here, and I mean, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not registered with that party, or any party for that matter. But I mean, pretending like any of these people are progressives. There's very few progressives at the State House. Very few. It is much like in Washington, D.C. There's a handful of progressives, of actual progressives. Everybody says they're progressive, but I mean, they're right wing. They're center right Democrats. They're Reagan Democrats, is what most of the party is.
But the thing that really strikes me about that, just in general, right, is that we know that we actually have a system that works if you fund it. It's literally a system that has been borne out decade after decade. If you create an emergency shelter for someone that provides stabilization services, that includes wraparound services like medical appointments, see if there's counseling that's necessary, and then career counseling coupled with housing assistance, right? And you get someone into then a temporary shelter, which is different than an emergency shelter that goes from 30 days up to 6 months. That within those structures, if you do the same services, then you get people on a path to regular housing. And we have shown it again and again and again and again. The problem with that system is it costs money because you need to provide the services attached to it. And then on top of it, the people that provide those services are chronically underpaid. And yet we have all these other people who are making $330,000 a year. Not to say that I'm talking about anybody specifically that happens to work for the city of Worcester. But the fact is that why not have that position make, I don't know, 250 and take that 80 and create two more service providers for the unhoused, which we all agree is a crisis. The thing is, the crazy part is while these policies are being changed, they agree it's a crisis. They use that language. They use that language. They call it a crisis. They say this is the problem. So if it's a crisis, why don't we try to start at the root of the problem, not put churn, which, by the way, almost every study, and this is peer-reviewed study, conservative, middle of the everywhere, all over the world, says the same thing. Shelter churn leads directly to sickness. It leads directly to higher rates of crime. It leads directly to suicide. There's unbelievable science behind this. The data is so clear. Emergency shelter churn is the worst possible solution for this, and that they chose that. And I'm not. I agree with what you're saying, Tom. I'm not trying to just go after Democrats. The issue is we talk in a bunch of other different subjects about using experts and people with lived experience and people who know the system and people who understand things for other agencies, other important and prominent municipal and state government services, but we're not going to use it over here. It makes no sense.
Yeah, it's
I'm just talking about the WHS, the Worcester Housing, the reserve. So that's the other thing. There's a bunch of reserve funds that have to be checked off because the legislature doesn't like to release those funds. Anyways, that's an even longer conversation. That's a good point, Wanda, though. That's a good point. They do use it for admin and vehicles. They do like to throw their names on cars. They love that. Throwing names on cars is a go-to move in Massachusetts.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know about what people make. Like, what people make is what they make. But, I mean, this just comes down to priorities, really. And I talked to a woman this week who used to work for Fidelity, made a bunch of money, had an illness, and then was the victim of a scam for a lot of money, and has been fighting eviction from her home for some time. The home has been foreclosed, sold at auction, and now the new owner is trying to throw her out. But she fought for her home. There's a whole host of things wrong with the eviction, but the housing court, especially in Worcester, is just over it and just tosses people out of the houses. And she has looked for a new place to live because she knows that we're getting to the end of the road here, and she has an eviction. Nobody's going to rent to her, and that's how people end up homeless. That's one example of how people end up homeless. If something happens, you get tossed out of a place, and then you can't rent anywhere.
No, I'm with you.
I mean, if it's a circular feedback loop of awful, right? If everything you do just makes it worse, no matter what you do, fully acknowledging, she had some issues, and that's not the bank or her the current owner, legally the current owner of the house, is fault. But I mean, if you don't do anything here, it just ends up in this cycle of awful, and then every cycle is worse. I mean, why wouldn't and that just leads to an incentive to fight like hell to stay in the place that you're in if somebody's trying to kick you out, because you have nowhere to go because you can't rent from anybody.
Yeah, you can't. And then, as much as they like to say that when someone gets booted, after the process, when they get when they get booted, that it doesn't carry on. It does carry on. And like Wanda just said, that it shouldn't stay on their bio, but it does. And so people go into the court records, and then now you can't rent anywhere, even though it might not have been a situation where you weren't willing to pay. It was something else that created this situation, right? It wasn't that. I'll be honest with you. I used the RAFT system not that long ago. RAFT is the emergency rent assistance. When I was in between jobs, and I just had a bad situation, and so I ended up using RAFT, and it helped me. But I also went through the process of RAFT, all the paperwork that you have to sign, and the process that it is. You need a landlord who was willing to participate in that system, right? So you not only do you sign, but they have to sign, and then they have to apply. You have to apply together. So now you have to go back to the person you can't pay and create and ask for them to help you. They like you said, they might have someone else who's coming in who's going to pay more, and now it's like,
That
well,
happened in this situation, as far as
yeah,
from what I understand. And I haven't verified all this. Is just from a conversation I had with this
yeah,
person. But according to them, they had a raft application that they're now technically their landlord, the person that bought the house at auction, refused to participate in, so they didn't get any
yeah.
money because they want to throw them out.
Yeah. Yeah, because the thing with raft is once the landlord signs it, I think it's I'm pretty sure it's 12 months or until the total approved funds run out that they have to work with you. So once they do
Yeah,
it
and
the
it's
first
capped at
time,
$7,000. So
yeah, I think it's 7 grand. But 7 grand, if you think about, yeah, and it doesn't really pay a lot of rent, but it probably
6
gets you
months if you're lucky.
six months, you know what I mean? So it's a
Yeah.
6 months. So that means that realistically, almost every person is 6 months away from being on the street if they're not uh, in their own home.
Yep.
We're like right there at the edge of the cliff. Think about how many people live in this state and around, and that's a Massachusetts-based system. I'm sure there's other systems in other states, but that means
Mhm.
that a couple million people in Massachusetts are right there, right there in 6 months, and you could be and then what does the emergency system do then?
Throws you
What
out
does
in
it?
5 days.
Yeah, kicks you out in 5 days. Just oh man, terrible.
And there doesn't seem to be any determination to actually do anything to get at any of these root problems. None.
No, no, no. There's no political will. It's easier to do this and put the burden on the people. Yeah, no, you're right, Wanda. We were saying maybe if you have like less than $1,000 rent, which is very rare nowadays. So the other thing is all these buildings. So I saw this ad that they're running about some empty buildings in Boston, how they're going to solve it. And and so actually I was going to talk about this with you, Tom. One of the companies, wind companies. So there was a recent article that we might have participated in. Is involved
Later.
in some of these properties that are all of a sudden becoming, maybe they're going to be the housing option for people. Actually, the other day I was talking about this with Manny. I was at the Telegram and Gazette building, right? Because I had to go to the ATM, the Webster 5 ATM, which, by the way, that Webster 5 ATM never works. So I had to go into the bank. And I said I had to go into the bank. I don't care if Webster 5 gets mad at me. That ATM never works on Front Street. Anyways, as I went in there, the elevators are there in the lobby, and there's like a little handwritten sign there, right? And the handwritten sign says that only the first floor and the TNG floor are accessible, and the rest of the floors are not accessible. And it says that if you get in this elevator, only this floor will work, right? So it's interesting. So does that mean every other floor in that building is not being used? And I
Probably.
understand the TNG building is like a legacy building in Worcester, although you can't see it in Tom's picture behind City Hall up there. But those floors can't be used for something like that. I mean, what are they doing up there? There's bathrooms and stuff in that building, so I'm wondering if there could be a way to do that, but there's no speed related to it. There's no
Yeah.
there's
No.
no
There's no sense of urgency that this is.
no sense of urgency at all, at all.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so that's
Uh,
terrible. But anyways, I
yeah.
wanted to complain because bad decision, just not a good
Yeah.
one.
I mean, and look, I guess I'll just caveat with I don't know what the restraints are or how tapped out the
Yeah,
capacity is, but I mean, how do you go from 30 days to 5? I just
doesn't
don't.
make sense. It just doesn't make sense.
Moving on to another super uplifting topic.
Yeah, happy days. We're all about positivity here at the This Week in Worcester podcast.
Another person just announced yesterday by the police department, but I guess it occurred, according to them, on August 6th. Yet another person in critical condition. This an adult woman struck on Greenwood Street on the 6th. Was at least as far as they report in critical condition. Of course, that was on August 6th, July 29th, a 13-year-old girl who's, from what I understand, at least as of a week ago, was still in a coma. June 27th, another 13-year-old girl. This one was killed on Belmont Street. July 19th, a 26-year-old man on a scooter on June Street, serious injuries. A 1-year-old girl on Lincoln Street, June 24th. And then this was in a parking lot, but, an 88-year-old man struck in a parking lot on Park Ave in March. And we talked last week about the city manager and the mayor's statement of a declaring a crisis but not a health emergency, and
Right.
that whole thing. And the city manager's also talked about his three prongs of trying to work toward
Vision Zero.
Vision Zero. Thank you.
Yeah.
And working toward the elimination of what he calls traffic violence, which is, I'm sometimes annoyed by, 20-cent catchphrases, but I kind of like that one because it's accurate. Car accidents are pretty violent.
They are. It is violence.
So, I'll sign on to that one. But, I feel like you disputed this and I didn't take you up on it at the time, but we might be going back there. The connection between speed and severity of injury, more speed equals more force equals more damage. It's that simple. Right. The city manager's three prongs of road design, education, and enforcement in that order. And look, I'm all for not trying to fine the public through the police department by writing tickets like crazy. But I mean, some enforcement is probably necessary here.
100.
The situation is, I would say, at crisis levels. Just some stats, which I'll have in a story tomorrow. 92 crashes this year involving, quote, vulnerable users. That's bicyclists, pedestrians, people on scooters, etc. 2 of those fatal, and 12 suspected serious injury, and 46 suspected minor injury. And the rest, apparently, 16 no apparent injuries and some that were not reported.
Right.
And that's, there's also been 2 fatalities in vehicle crashes this year. So, half of the crashes so far this year have been, quote, vulnerable users, which is a legal term the state uses. And I learned an interesting thing that we mentioned, I believe, on this podcast last week, but I'm kind of building a story around it for tomorrow. Waiting for I've asked, formally asked the police department if this is the case, but have it from a few very good sources that the Worcester Police Department, even though the third prong is enforcement, the Worcester Police Department does not own a single radar gun.
Which is just, if that is true, and it looks like, as you're building the story, it looks like it's true. How are they going to enforce speed limits that they say is part of their redesign plans if they don't own radar guns?
There's a proposal to lower the statutory speed limit from 30 to 25. And that only applies, just for the record, that only applies in areas where there is no otherwise posted limit. So,
right.
You don't have to do 20. You wouldn't have to do 25 on Route 9 or whatever. But what's the point? I mean, I guess there is a point in the mental, awareness of the public. But I mean, and give some credence to the police department. They are down 50 people or so. I think that their history has something to do with it. People will say it's all because people talk bad about police, and there are recruiting problems all over the country. But I would just add that being under federal investigation isn't exactly inviting to a potential employee. So I understand there's limitations here, but I mean, people are becoming extraordinarily hurt, and some are dying.
Yeah. So I mean,
You know, this
that
this girl
recruiting.
that got hit on Shrewsbury Street, from what I understand, you know, it was
The,
10 days or so after the
yeah,
crash, and she was still in a coma. I mean, she's not in good shape. It's not good.
she was in a and we know that at least that particular driver was cited, not just for speeding, but they were cited for illegal traffic maneuvers or whatever they were doing. In Shrewsbury Street. If you've driven on Shrewsbury Street, you know how people like to whip up and do the U-turns, and some people change lanes. Obviously, I mean that's just a scourge, is people changing lanes without a blinker, no indication, anything like that. So, and then of course people don't self-enforce on the law, which is that when a pedestrian enters the crosswalk, even if they don't have the light on, we're supposed to stop. That's the law in Massachusetts. And then there's no enforcement of that law. Very, very rarely do you ever see a ticket issued for that. Obviously, because they don't have police officers standing at the crosswalks, which, because they, like you said, there's not enough personnel to do that. And why would you want to be a police officer? I'm not completely, I don't know that I would want to do that.
No, I certainly wouldn't.
We talked about it last week a little bit about this idea of maybe creating a separate traffic division, which they do have, but they look like the same as regular police officers. So I wonder if, and then can they get pulled to do other things? Like, we don't know all those details. Like, what's the rules and regulations? If you're assigned to traffic, do you get pulled for emergencies and other things like that? I mean, it's possible if there was a separate division that wasn't really associated with the police department, that maybe you could recruit people, but then you'd have to pay them. Right? So then now we got to figure out how to pay those people. And again, we're talking about this chronically underfunded situation because, a bunch of people that own a lot of stuff aren't paying their taxes. So, I mean, it's what it is. How do we deal with that? How do we resolve all those issues? It's a huge nationwide, worldwide issue where we have these problems, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense that we can't have a logical approach. The other thing is, but I want to talk about the guns. If they don't have the radar gun, how do they enforce the new speed limit? One, they already don't enforce really bad traffic behavior. Like, so, because it has to be, a police officer has to see it, right? So you have to see someone changing lanes, blowing through a stop sign, blowing through a red light, unless they put up cameras. But if I'm right, I don't know if, I think what's this, municipality by municipality, I don't think they can issue traffic citations in Worcester from cameras, right? Am I right about that? Am I wrong? I'm not
They
sure.
cannot. They
They
cannot.
cannot, right? So that's something that would have to be, that I believe that's a home rule change. That has to be put into the charter, right? That would have to be a new
I don't
category of.
think so. So I don't think that that's a home rule
Okay.
issue. But uh, the problem with that is when those cameras were put in, it was promised up and down that those cameras will not be used for enforcement. They're
Right.
used as for traffic enforcement.
Right.
And I think it could turn into a war if they try and go back on that now.
Right.
And rightfully so. I mean, if that's what they said, and then, oh, well, circumstances have changed. I mean, they have, but, I mean, those who were advocating against it, when they were placated by, okay, we won't use them for enforcement, they wouldn't have gone away and stopped complaining had they not been, made this promise that I don't think anybody's proposing yet that they go back on. I'm just saying if they go there, it's going to be a war, I think.
I have to be honest with you. I don't know how, well, I don't know how people feel about it. If you blow a red light and there's someone taking a picture of it, I feel like send you a ticket in the mail, buddy. Like, to be honest with you, I think that they should enforce that rule. I don't really care if why are you blowing the red light? Why can't you stop like everybody else? Just stop, wait, go next. Why do you have to blow that red light? So to me, like, it is what it is. If there's cameras there and they go to that enforcement, I'm okay with it. I have no problem with it. To be honest with you, I know in Indiana, they have that private highway in Indiana. I know this is like a way further down the line thing, but they have interior speed enforcement inside that private highway. And so if you go in the highway, first of all, it's a tolled road, and they have the speed detectors inside there. They can bill your account for going over the speed limit inside that highway. Now that's a private highway. It's not a municipal highway. I don't know if that's where we're kind of headed. Are we headed in that direction up here? Massachusetts is small. It's not as big as some of these other places. So are we gonna, create a situation where we put sensors up all over? Can you imagine? Can you imagine? You think the Big Dig was bad? Them putting things up and down the roads to do that? It's crazy. We need to enforce things, and I if they don't have the tools to enforce it, you're obviously not going to be able to do it. It's just going to create a rhetoric situation, which is what we're already in. Yeah, go slower. Okay, well, but no one's going to catch me. And then I'm pretty sure in Massachusetts you have to have a radar signal to confirm the ticket, right? I'm pretty sure. So
Yeah, I don't know.
if I
I
don't
was
think
actually just thinking though. I don't know if the cameras are. I don't think it's a home rule thing, but I don't know if the camera enforcement by camera is legal in this state. It is in Rhode Island, but I don't
it
think
is in
it
Rhode
is.
Island for sure. Yeah, yeah. No, I know that because as soon as you go down 146, the signs are everywhere.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's what's coming next. Is are we going to change to a state that enforces by video and plates and all that kind of stuff? I mean, they already bill us for our the tolls by plates, right, or the
Hmm.
transponders and stuff. So, I mean, I'm sure the technology is yeah, Hooper, yeah, one was just saying about Belmont and Hooper, and yeah, for sure that's a rough intersection. Other thing is road design. Obviously most of these cities and towns are older, where we live, oldest in the country area. They were not designed for the volume of cars that
Right.
are on the road. So it's just crazy. Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, it makes some people crazy, but I am all in on road design.
yeah,
I
fix
don't
the
think
roads.
I don't go up Mill Street very often, but I was out one day and went, I'm going up Mill Street. This was a while ago now,
Yeah,
just to see what all the fuss is about. And when I got to Chandler Street, I was like, that was it. Like, I don't
yeah.
understand what we're even talking about. But
It's
I
not
mean,
even.
I don't.
Is it even a mile? Is it a mile? I think it's not even a mile. I don't
Yeah,
know
I
what
don't
to.
know.
It's
Like,
not that long
just
of a stretch. It's
just
just
stay
crazy.
in your lane. Stay in your lane. Um,
Stay in your lane. Yeah, yeah. Don't drive into
so
the car that's clearly parked.
yeah, I mean, they need to do a better job on implementation and
Yeah, sure.
rollout.
Put an orange cone there or something. Do something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
something. But I mean, in general, road redesign for as traffic calming, I think is easily the most the easiest way and the longest lasting way to actually slow things down.
not only that, though, right? I would think they would want to do that because road redesign is a classic way for municipalities and the state to dip into those tax dollars and keep that job system flowing, right? Because we know in Worcester we never want to fix potholes. So, hey, if we redesign the roads, we're going to have to be painting them and changing the curbs all the time. You guys should want to do that. Let's go. Let's go. Let's keep those public works department employees smashing those salaries. Let's get the cops out there on some details. Let's go. Let's get it going, right? Because it's not
Yeah,
obvious that that's what you guys do in the other things. So why don't you just do it here? We already know that it's a problem. Just go ahead and do it. Just go ahead and do it. Just go ahead and steal our tax dollars and screw it up. Because that's what
no, no,
it's like
screwing up is
almost
not okay.
guaranteed that they're gonna do it though. I have zero confidence in their ability to lead us to an obvious solution. It's not hard. It's not hard, man. Teach people how to drive better and everybody do it together and make the roads safer. Obvious. Let's do that. No. We don't want to do that. We want to
Well,
make
I
progress.
mean, there's also, we had to build a ballpark, so there's not the ability to.
Absolutely. We got to build that ballpark. We got to make sure Table Talk Pie gets their tax incentives. Got to make sure all those things happen. But we can't. Make sure Spectrum sign that Spectrum contract because Spectrum is going to deliver quality customer service for the city of Worcester for decades to come, right? And do it in secret with no one watching. You know what I mean? Hey. Hey,
Uh,
speaking of which, no, wait. We're gonna drag down. I don't want to go far down.
no, I don't want to go back there.
Yeah.
Let's stay out of cable today.
Yeah. Plus, we're about to
Um,
yell at each other. We're about to get in because the next subject is the meat of it.
yeah, I don't even like pitch. So do some, post-Olympic Celtics talk, apparently, which I'm for. We don't do much sports in this show, so let's do it. Pitch your ridiculous idea so I can destroy you.
So here's what I think, that the fact that Jaylen Brown got snubbed from the Olympic team, and he did get snubbed. We can talk about that in a second. And that Jason Tatum was consistently benched throughout the process is the best thing ever to happen for the Celtics. It guarantees a second championship this year because those two guys are in the perfect prime time zone for basketball players to be pissed off at the rest of the league. And it is a consistent theme my entire life. If you have an angry 27-year-old to 29-year-old primetime player, you are going to win a championship. And so that's all we need is two angry, the Jays, whatever they call them, Tatum and Brown. Get them angry, get them pissed off. We're going to lock in the championship. But it was in the bag, Tom. It was in the bag. It was so bad. I'm sorry. So, Jaylen Brown. Grant Hill said that the reason why they didn't pick Jaylen Brown when Kawhi Leonard got hurt was because of team building and how they needed to construct the team. So they selected Derek White. Right immediately, he's lying to you because why'd they pick Kawhi Leonard in the first place? If they were team building, why'd they pick Kawhi Leonard? Because they were wanting to create a last hurrah for a bunch of the older players in the league. LeBron, Steph Curry, Durant, Kawhi Leonard, a bunch of those guys. And they wanted the next generation, Devin Booker, Jalen Brunson, Jason Tatum, all those guys to take a nap for a little bit, go along your way, Tyler Halliburton, all those players, and you'll get your gold, but we're gonna go out with a last hurrah. And you can tell by the coaching staff that they selected. The coaching staff is obvious in your face. Steve Kerr was the head coach, right? Steph Curry, right? It just blanket in your face. I get it, okay. But the three guys that led the team were not the best players on the team anymore. They haven't been because they're older and they're not the same. It's clear that they chose age over skill and over talent at this point because they're all older. And I get it. I understand it. LeBron is, the king of the sneaker universe. So, of course, you got to let him get his last shot in there. But they did it on purpose. It's obvious and in your face. And I think it's a great thing because it's going to lead to a Celtics championship, which, by the way, an NBA championship, way more valuable than an Olympic gold medal. Way more valuable. Have at it, Haas.
There's just so many things wrong with this. Steve Kerr has been the head coach of USA Basketball now for multiple years. I mean, he's been the head coach of USA Basketball for a long time, for a bit, not a long time, not like decades, but for a bit. I think he was even the coach last Olympics, if I remember correctly.
In Tokyo?
Or maybe they switch horses after Tokyo, and he's been, because they usually do this for kind of the whole run, right? Or the whole last.
Hey, who was the MVP in Tokyo?
I don't remember.
Was it Jason Tatum?
Was it?
Was he the best player on that team? Right? Because Durant didn't play. Steph Curry refused to play.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think so. One. Yeah, but
anyways.
Yeah, I don't like. First of all, Tatum doesn't get pissed off about anything. He drives people nuts because he's very even.
He doesn't. He doesn't get mad.
He's very laid back. Not a dude you want to be like on your side in a fight, I don't think, because he's just like, hey. But I don't really have any problem with. I mean, he's 25 years old. I don't have any problem with riding pine for this Olympics. He's going to be the guy next time around, if he wants to. And I just don't think that either one of them need any more motivation to win besides winning. Winning's enough motivation. Not getting minutes in the Olympics is not going to affect anything. Maybe Brown not getting selected because I agree that's nonsense. But that was also done. That was also done before the playoffs when he was the best player on the team.
No, the selections was done. It's just when Kawhi Leonard got injured, the next player up was Derek White. Right, which is the point is that no, that's you were never intent. They don't want Brown because Brown is politically, he doesn't like Nike. That's really what that comes down to. And Nike is the sponsor of the Olympics. It is what it is, right? So you just have to deal with that. You can be against it, which I think it is against it, but in a world that we live in, there's really no way to be completely morally perfect in relation to corporations and companies. So it is what it is. They picked one over the other. I think he wears Adidas now. I'm not sure.
Sneaker politics doesn't interest me.
It's weird. It's
and
weird
as far as the old guys, I mean, could LeBron go back to the Cleveland and put the whole team on his back and march to the finals?
No,
he's 39 years old. But I mean, that he's not a top 10 player in the league?
No way. He's not top 10 anymore. Not anymore.
I mean,
15, 20 maybe, but he's not top 10.
He's in an awful situation in LA, which they don't know what the hell they're doing.
I mean, he's not.
AD's great, but can't stay on the court.
He's in charge down there. So I mean,
that could be part of it too. But I mean, the guy's doing what he's doing at 39. I mean, he can still just play bully ball and own the game. He did it in the prelims.
He did. But I would say this is that this is my opinion, right? If they ran a more balanced approach, they would have blown everybody out. They would have blown everybody out.
Anyway.
They did not. They got it was a 1-point game with South Sudan. Serbia kept them within 5 twice, and France. If Victor Wembanyama was maybe 6 months older, one more NBA seasons older, that gold medal game would have been different. It was only a 9-point game. It wasn't a blowout at all. Steph Curry, to his credit, he hit 4 in a row, back to back threes.
The shot he hit to basically put the game away, that was stupid.
What is he doing like this? It looked like he was dapping. He's dapping while he's shooting. He's like, and then he goes like this.
So that was it. I mean, it's not going back from that.
Of course, he was shooting sideways. What is he doing? So I know I'm with you on that. I'm not saying that he's not. And Steph Curry, greatest shooter of all time. LeBron James, arguably the best player of all time. And I'm not against LeBron James at all. I know people like to do the LeBron hate thing. I'm not against LeBron. I'm a Celtics fan, and so I am pro Celtics, but I'm not the Celtics fan that hates LeBron. I look at him as like, he's a great player. I mean, what are you going to say? How can you not admit that he's great? The guy's won 4 titles with 3 teams. No one's ever done that. So, I mean,
not only that. I mean, the guy, he was 18 when he came in the league. He had the weight of the world. He was the next Jordan, and he did it. He went and did it.
And the real king, the real pin in his cap is the championship against Golden State in the middle of their run.
That was ridiculous.
When they were down 3-1, came back. Yeah, I mean, and he did it. You go back and watch that series. LeBron literally beat them by himself in those last 3 games. It is what it is.
And I mean, been married to the same girl he met in high school, and build schools for kids. Like, what a terrible guy.
Yeah, no, he's not
because he said twice that maybe cops shouldn't kill black people randomly. That makes him a bad guy. It's ridiculous.
No, he's not a bad. Yeah, the LeBron hate is nonsense. The Jordan, and I'm from that era too, so I get the people that saw Jordan play. They want to have that argument. I get it, but it was different. It's different. The sport has completely changed. So but by the way, LeBron winning the way he's won and being considered the best doesn't take anything away from Jordan's winning and being considered the best, right? So
I mean, there's a longevity argument, right? I mean, he's got more points than everybody. I mean, so he's also played forever. I always comparing eras is stupid.
It is. I hate it. I hate the era talk. It's useless. They're all great, so let them be great. They won. They're champs. It's nonsense.
I mean, like they play a lot of quote positionless basketball. LeBron, and he brings the ball up a lot, but I mean, he's essentially a front court player. Jordan wasn't.
Yeah, he's a power forward that could pass. No one's ever been like that. Like, I mean, he's a 3-point guard, Karl Malone, and Karl Malone was one of the greatest players we've ever seen, and LeBron was better than him. And
Karl Malone's a piece of garbage.
But I'm talking about basketball. I'm not talking about personally. I'm just saying he was one of the. I mean, LeBron for all intents is Magic Johnson with a jump shot. People forget Magic Johnson couldn't shoot, but LeBron James is the same body type. He's taller. You know what I mean? And so. It's just one of the great players of all time. But they totally 100% for. And, by the way, I thought one of the best things ever at the very end of the gold medal game, Mike Tirico interviewed Dwayne Wade, right? And Dwayne Wade is
Dwayne
in
Wade
the
was doing
media.
color, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was doing color, but Dwayne Wade at this point is he's a LeBron guy, right? It is what it is, and that's how it is in the league. There's a guy that the people that like him, and so he said this. He said your ego will get you your big ego will get you to the team, but you have to shrink that ego if you want to be a part of this team at USA Basketball. That's what he said. So to me, it was a bold-faced shot. As he's saying to the younger players that, hey, it is what it is. You gotta do things because like Kevin Durant, I think is still a legitimate top 10 player in the league, and he sacrificed his game for the team to win because you can see that he was playing a different role.
Mm-hmm.
Devin Booker, they played differently. They let LeBron and Steph be the two lead dogs here so they could play together, and you need that in basketball. You have to have someone take less shots. You have to have someone be willing to rebound. It is what it is. So,
yeah, but I mean, I don't think any of this has any effect on the Celtics whatsoever.
yeah, I'll see you next June for the Duck Boat Parade #2. Watch that. That's happening. They're going to win every game by 25. They might win 75 games this year, and it's going to be just ruthless annihilation of the league. John Cena.
That's some Homer stuff. That's some Homer stuff. I mean, okay. the Bucks are going to be a very different team, and I'll never, it's hard to bet against that guy.
Yeah, but Giannis has already cashed it in. He's already cashed it in. He started. Yeah, it's not just hurt, man. It's he's just not the same player. I used to do a little bit more stuff.
Like, is this a soap opera we're in? You're just making stuff up now?
I mean, the NBA is the most obvious sport when it comes to people just totally mail it in basketball when they don't want to play hard. They do. It's just I've watched it my whole life. You know what I mean? The Celtics are the most talented team up and down the roster. It's not even close. Even after some of the trades.
Depends what's going to happen with what's his name? He's on the Olympic team. The guard, white guy with the hairline, or light skinned guy with the hairline.
Yeah, Brunson.
No, Celtics player. Yeah, backup guard.
Oh, Derek White. Yeah, they're going to sign him.
Yeah. It depends what they do with him. They got money issues. It depends. Yeah. Wow, I can't remember anybody's name right now. The big white guy. It depends on if he can stay healthy. I mean, how bad his leg is. He was the difference maker on that team. He really was.
Oh, Porzingis. Yeah, Porzingis for sure. So, I mean, by the way, if I was ever a general manager of a team, he's the guy. He doesn't play the first 40 games. Just like you do whatever you want. You don't play back-to-backs. You don't play 3 games in 4 nights, and we're just going to save you for the playoffs, and then we're going to run right through the league.
It's fine. And then he got hurt. And then he got hurt in the first round.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? His health chased him. So, yeah. I mean, there's some variables, but they're in good shape. But I don't think anything that happened in Paris is going to change it.
This might be the beginning of like a 2, 3, 4. I don't know. They might run off a series of them because the rest of the league, it is basketball is weird, man. Sometimes basketball only does 2 things. You have dynasties who just win a bunch of championships, or you have a stretch like we're in right now where you have like 5 or 6 years where it's a different person every year, and so. But usually at the end of that little run, there's a dynasty. And so, it's the same thing happened after Jordan. And then eventually the Warriors came along. They won 4 titles in 6 years. Now, is it possible that the Celtics are the next one? I don't know. I think they are.
Sure. But I mean.
And I think the Olympics helped. The Olympics helped. Oh, yeah.
That's crazy. Listen, in the league with Nikola Jokic, I don't know that anybody's running over him every year. So
that guy can't jump an inch off the ground, and he's an unbelievable basketball
unreal.
player. Unreal.
Dude, throwing backwards. Embiid didn't look great in the Olympics, but I mean, if he comes back to normal, they're dangerous. Milwaukee's dangerous. I mean, it's
Philly. Oh man, listen, I don't care if Philly can sign everybody. They're never going to win. That team's not. Daryl Morey, his whole theory, it's never going to win. The process is processed out. They'll never win. They don't have it. They don't have the.
Yeah, but Embiid scored. What did he score? 60 points this year.
So what? In one game,
it was. He had some game that was insane.
He did. It was 70 points, I think. I think it was 70.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he's unbelievable.
So,
he's unbelievable. But then in the playoffs, Can't do it.
There's teams out there that can catch them slipping. That's the bottom line.
We'll see. We'll see. Celtics in 4. You know.
Wrap us up with some food.
All right. This is the best part of the This Week in Worcester podcast is when Tom and I talk about food. We did a bunch of dessert stuff, and now last week we did favorite sandwiches. This week we have an epic conversation that could lead to fist fight between Tom and I. Right, here we go. What is your favorite form of potato?
Like how it's prepared?
Yeah, how potatoes can be turned into a lot of things, and I'm not saying this because I'm Irish, or maybe I am, but it is what it is.
Potato eating Mick.
Absolutely, man, absolutely. That's my.
I was like, do you want russet or I didn't know what you want. I'm gonna go off the beaten path here. I'm gonna go potato pancake.
Potato pancake. Oh my God. That's unbelievable. Manny's not watching, but my mom makes the best potato pancakes in the world. Is she done? I'm serious right now. Oh my God. Oh, my mom, that's her number one meal is potato pancakes. And,
otherwise, if I didn't think of that, I was going to go with Leanne and go French fries, but I'm going to go potato pancake.
All right. So for me, it is French fries, but it's a specific kind of French fry. It's the crinkle cut curly French fry. So it's a curly fry that's also crinkle cut. I forget the name of the company that does it. I don't know. It's a bag. You can buy a bag at the grocery store, whatever.
It's oddly specific.
It's so specific. And it's perfect because when you put the mustard in there, right, it kind of like sits in between the little crevices. And then you can eat it when it's chili and cheese. You can cover it and all that stuff, and it catches extra things. It's perfect, warm, potatoy goodness.
Yeah, I can do like the chili cheese fries. I will. I'm a fat guy, but by and large, ketchup, mustard, and my ingredient for absolutely every meal that I eat, Worcester sauce.
What's it really?
Gotta get some spice in there. Not Worcestershire, but Rooster.
Rooster.
Yeah, whatever you call it.
Okay. All right.
Sriracha, that's what it is.
Sriracha.
Yeah. Because I need some spice. I need the sweat when I eat.
There's some brand of spicy mustard sauce that Leanne buys that she has in her office, and it is unbelievably good.
Potato skins is a decent second place answer.
Potato skins is legit. Home fries, it depends on how the home fries are made. The big fat home fries, I'm not a fan, but the little cubed ones, scoop them in the eggs. Oh my God, Tom. Bro, it's not even an hour.
I know. We're going to get out of here on time.
Oh my God. This is unbelievable. It's time ever.
So I believe we have reached our conclusion of
that is
the
correct.
This Week in Worcester podcast. We will try to screw it up less next week. Until then, This Week in Worcester out.